A lot of fighters, a lot of combat sport athletes equate conditioning to fitness. And because of this, they do their conditioning work. And when it comes time for their fight or their matches, they get a huge adrenaline dump and they completely gas out. And afterwards, they're like, I don't know what happened. I did all my cardio work. I was actually getting PBs in my cardio times, in my runs, in my circuit times, or whatever it is that they were doing. And this is actually a very common thing. You see, this is actually off the back of a conversation I was having with one of my friends who is a combat sport athlete, and he competes and trains in wrestling, in Muay Thai, a whole bunch of stuff. And he actually had the same thing happen to him recently. So he was training for a fight, and I believe it was a Muay Thai fight, and everything was good. He was feeling pretty good. Training went well. He was fit in training, was able to do rounds, recover well between rounds, and all the rest of it. On fight day, during the fight, he felt a massive adrenaline dump at the start of the fight, right, somewhere near the beginning of the fight, and that forced him to make an adjustment, make the decision to slow things down so that he doesn't get gassed out. We all know, any one of us watching this, who's actually competed in combat sports, especially combat sports, and even contact sports. When you get that adrenaline dump and you know that if you keep pushing, then you're going to get tired, very exhausted. Tired is not even the word, exhausted. And that in of itself is a very terrifying feeling. It's actually one of the main things a lot of combat sports are kind of afraid of. It's not so much winning or losing, and again, this is something I was having a chat to him about. It's that feeling that we're going to get there, and despite our efforts that we've made to be fit, something is going to happen, and we're going to be so exhausted that we cannot even defend ourselves, and that is actually going to lead to our embarrassment, right? Our humiliation. That we are trying to do something, but we just feel we're so exhausted and frozen that we can't do anything. And this is actually, I think, part of the reason why a lot of fighters overdo conditioning stuff, especially like circuit stuff, high intensity, like interval stuff, because they want to make sure that they have been in that situation again and again during training, and they're training their body and their system and their mind to be able to handle that. That's for another discussion. That's not the correct way to go about it, but this is what I talk about when I say conditioning is not about fitness. Fitness is one part of conditioning when it comes to training. Conditioning is really about three things. One is the actual fitness work that you do, and that means developing your cardiovascular system on a base level, and then also at a more intense level to develop cardiovascular power, right? Increasing your VO2 max and increasing basically how much work you can do, like the highest amount of work output you can have, and still not get into anaerobic threshold kind of thing, right? So that's one. And then the other is also training the lactate system, right? To be able to produce a lot of work in a very short amount of time, but also to be able to produce that work and be able to recover again quickly, to be able to do it again soon, right? So not losing as much explosiveness as the rounds go on, as time goes on, right? And both the lactate system and the aerobic system are tied in together in being able to do that. They don't work independently of each other, but each of them have certain improvements that they bring about independently, right? So doing lactate system work, yes, will have some influence on the aerobic system, but also has a lot of influences locally on the muscular level, right? Doing aerobic work has more sort of global changes that it brings to the heart, to the lungs, to the circulation, right? Blood flow, for the purposes of blood flow, so ultimately for the purposes of oxygen delivery to the cells, and it does also create some local muscular changes, right? So that's one side, that's the fitness work. But then you have the conditioning aspect as it relates to stress management, right? So the stress response is a very real thing when it comes to a combat sport scenario. Doesn't matter what kind of combat sport you do, whether it's wrestling, jiu-jitsu, MMA, boxing, kickboxing, whatever. This is a natural response for the body to have when you are there, and as things are getting closer, each person obviously responds differently, right? Some people are nervous from a month out. Some people get nervous the week of competition, that anxiety, right? Some people get nervous on the day. Some people are totally fine until they actually get to the venue. Everybody's different, right? Some people only get nervous when they're walking out and they get inside the ring, right? Or on the mats, and they're face to face with their opponent. Everybody is different. The thing is, regardless, there is going to be a stress response from the body, right? Because of what it perceives to be a fight or flight scenario, right? A threatening scenario, a scenario that's threatening to your well-being, to your life. And this is hardwired into us, right? You can never, and you shouldn't need to, like, the point is not to eradicate it once and for all and never ever feel it again. For some people it might happen, maybe it does happen. For some people that they were really around it, you know, all their life, for example. And really, even if you dig deep, you might find that it's not there for them. It's that they've been around it for so long and so much that they have always perceived it differently. Because we know, in terms of sports psychology, there is no difference between anxiety and excitement. They're both the same in terms of the body's physical response. It's just the way we perceive things that gives us a good feeling or a bad feeling, a positive label or a negative label, right? We say, I'm anxious, and other times we say, I'm excited. In terms of the actual way the body is responding to the situation, it's been shown to be the same, more or less, right? So again, with those people that you see that they're like completely calm when it comes to competition day or competing, you may think that they don't have a stress response, right? That anxiety response within the body, but chances are they actually do. It's just that they do it subconsciously and have done it for so long because maybe they grew up with a rough childhood, in a rough environment or whatever, that they just see this as a completely different thing as somebody who hasn't really grown up in that kind of an environment coming up, right? Regardless of whether you have been brought up in that environment or not, the stress response can be controlled. Your reaction to the stress response, to the adrenaline dump, to that process the body goes that is trying to get you ready for combat, right, can be controlled. Absolutely can be controlled. And it can be controlled through sports psychology drills, confidence drills, right, mental toughness drills. This has been proven. It's not even up for discussion anymore. It's not a myth. It's not speculation. It absolutely can be. And if you can reduce your stress response to a particular situation, in this case your match, your fight, you actually will have better conditioning, better fitness, right? You will not gas as easily, right? And then finally, the other part of conditioning is your efficiency of movement. So if you have somebody, if you have two people and one of them throws a kick and that kick is just not efficient in terms of the technique, they are going to expend more energy throwing that kick than somebody else who's been doing it for 10 years and is a master at it. It's very smooth, it's very technically proficient, and just an efficient way of kicking. So during, like for one kick, it might not show a difference in terms of somebody being tired or not tired, but after one round, after 2 rounds, it's going to show, right? After you've thrown a certain number of significant kicks, for example, it's going to show. A good example where it shows a lot is actually in grapplers, right? Because grappling takedowns and throws and things like that are so full body, right? The whole body is involved. If you're inefficient in the way you move and the way you set up a takedown and the way you execute a takedown, it actually starts to wear out on you much quicker than a simple punch, for example, right? So if you improve efficiency, especially efficiency under fatigue, which is very, very trainable, right? You can train specifically to become a little bit fatigued, a little bit exhausted, and train yourself to maintain good posture, for example, right? A good guard, to maintain a good technique when you shoot, to maintain good technique when you kick, and so on. This is absolutely trainable. And one of the problems is that you'll notice is when fighters get tired as the minutes go on or as the rounds go on, more and more of their technique gets more and more sloppy. So it becomes this like snowball effect where they get tired, then they go for a takedown and it's a sloppy takedown, meaning it's inefficient biomechanically, right? Technique-wise, it's inefficient. That inefficiency makes them more tired. They try and go for another takedown or another move. It's now that they're more tired, it's also again more inefficient. And so they get this roll-on effect and it just gets worse and worse and worse, right? So they gas out. So when you're training conditioning, in order to be properly conditioned, like when you turn up ready to go, you need to keep those 3 things in mind. You need to have conditioning firstly in the sense of having done correct conditioning, like fitness work that relates to you, your sport, and your deficiencies. So making sure your aerobic system is up to scratch where it needs to be for your requirements of your sport, making sure your lactate system is up to scratch, and so on. Then there is the mental aspect of things, to be able to deal with the stress response and having a plan in place. First of all, having done mental drills beforehand and applying it in training scenarios and making the training scenarios as much like competition scenarios as possible. And then also having management techniques, drills, such as breathing, for example, right? To be able to control the stress response, okay? And then finally, there is the aspect of actually training under fatigue and controlling technique whilst you're under fatigue, controlling efficiency of movement, even before you get fatigued, but also under fatigue. These all come together, all 3 of them, to give you what we call conditioning.